I just want to talk about fear or anxiety. Fear of going out of your comfort zone can feel very uncomfortable. So you try and do something, and just the thought of doing it seems to overwhelm you, and it stops you doing it. So Susan Jeffers wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It was a book written for women who want to go out of their comfort zone and do something good and challenge themselves and achieve greatness, but they can't because they're actually frightened of that change. It's like a big thing. So she wrote this book, which is that the fear never goes away until you challenge it. And I can actually explain to you from my own experience that indeed is the case. So I'll quickly show you a couple of things, and then you will understand what I'm talking about. Many years ago, I wanted to install these security lights, both at the front and the back. And it seemed like a big challenge because it meant tapping into the existing main supply, which means going inside, and then putting a couple of switches on there, and then putting a floodlight there with a PIR, which detects movement and then switches off, and then a very scale light on the right hand side. However, once I started with my knowledge of electronics and electricity, all just came together very, very easily. Once I did this, then I moved to the front and I did that. Then I moved to the alleyway on the other side and I did that. And it just seemed to flow so easily. Once I got started, once I started one project, the other one flowed quite easily. There used to be a great big fluorescent light here. I removed the fluorescent light and replaced it with a LED floodlight in the alleyway. This is a floodlight at the end of the alleyway, and this is the floodlight at the front door. The other thing I did was I insisted that this bell should be wired. It should not be a remote one, it should actually be physically wired. And so this is physically wired all the way up into the loft where you have a power supply. There's a bell on the inside and there's a bell on the outside. So if we're sitting in the garden, it would ring, and of course there's no interference whatsoever. See that box on the right hand side of the floodlight? That contains the second doorbell. So when we're sitting in the garden and somebody rings the doorbell, then this rings as well. We recently had a new wardrobe put in, and this wall looked like an absolute mess. So there was electrical work to be done, and this all needed filling. The paper had to be removed, and then the electrical stuff had to be done, and this had to be all tidied up because this is going to be boxed. And if you follow this down, you can see how I have connected these main sockets all the way through that tube and into that socket. It may look like it budge, but it has worked for about 14 years, so I don't see why it shouldn't work now. So that goes to 3 different 13-amp sockets for all kinds of things. 2 on either side of the bed and 1 in front of the window for ironing board and stuff like that. This seemed like a huge job. We couldn't get any tradespeople to help us. Someone's going to come and box this in, but apart from that, I had to do all of that. And it seemed like a huge job until I got started, and then it just flowed. Yes, it was a lot of effort filling the holes, sanding it, and then removing the paper was a big job in itself. And then we had to apply base coat because there were lots of little fine cracks everywhere. And then we applied the final coat, and as you can see, it's really not that bad now, ready for boxing in. Terribly wound up about claiming the 5th grant because you needed to know your turnover for last year. And without that, you couldn't do it. And so I was saying, okay, let's get all of the paperwork together. Let's get the bank statements, give it to the bookkeeper, allow him time to finish it, and then get the information and then apply online. When I made my mind up, it took me about a day to do the job. All I did was to look through my bank statements electronically, just write down on a piece of paper the amount of money coming in, real money, not refunds, not directors' loans, real money coming in. Find out what that amount was and then deduct the director's loan from there. And then that was my turnover. Now, my profit hadn't dropped by 30%, so I was in trouble there because you can only claim the grant, the full amount of the grant, 80%, if your profit has gone down by 30%, and it hadn't. But then it says, well, what if that was not a typical year? You can go back to the year before. And of course, our profit had dropped quite substantially. In fact, it was a third of what it was. And so we managed to claim the full grant. Once I did that, it seemed like it wasn't a problem anymore. The anxiety just totally went away. And now I'm finding the same kind of thing with starting a couple of courses that I'm doing, where the anxiety of doing it is like stopping me from making progress. But I know that the moment I actually start, then the anxiety will go away and I'll start to make a lot of progress. And before you know it, it's all done. So can you see that the fear never goes away until you actually challenge it? And this is what they do in the military. They shout at you until you almost pass out because they want you to challenge the fear. And people become very strong so that they can actually survive and thrive in a war situation. They also immerse people in things like spiders who got phobia of spiders, and that helps them get rid of the fear of spiders, all kinds of things. It works really well. So if you feel the fear and you don't let it stop you and you do it anyway, then you find that the fear actually goes away and you make progress. So read the book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, and you will know what I am talking about. Good luck.